Welcome to the 2017 Helen Keller Prize for Vision Research Award Ceremony. I was thinking this afternoon that although Helen Keller was born in Tuscumbia, Alabama, in a sense the Helen Keller we know was born in Baltimore, because it was here that her father brought her in 1886 to meet Alexander Graham Bell, then the most famous teacher of the deaf. And it was Graham Bell who found her teacher for her and gave her to the world. I want to welcome Stacy Holler, President and CEO of Bright Focus Foundation, our partner. This is her neighborhood, Baltimore and Washington, D.C. So Stacy, come up here and say hello to folks.
On behalf of Bright Focus, our board, we are so proud to be the sponsor of the Helen Keller Prize. We have some of our board members with us tonight, so I hope you'll have a chance to say hello to them. Bright Focus is about funding researchers so you can stay in the labs or see patients and not have to spend time figuring out where the next grant's going to come from. And everything we can do by leading, partnering, or not touching it if it's well covered, we're ready to do that with our friends around the globe. We're proud in the last 4 years we've given $45 million in research grants, and about half of that has been in the research area for glaucoma and macular degeneration in particular. I'd like to congratulate Dr. Garrett Mellis and his 3 tables of friends who are here from around the globe. And we also, in honor of you, invited our dear friends from the Embassy of the Netherlands to be with us to help celebrate your achievements and recognition in getting this award. And we're fortunate to have Regine Alders with us, who is the Counselor for Health, Welfare, and Support from the Embassy. Thank you for being with us. And in addition, a night wouldn't be right without 2 very important members of the vision community. And leading the charge is the head of the National Eye Institute, Dr. Paul Sieving. Thank you. And also someone known to many of us from the Center for Disease Control, Jameen Sadine, who's graced her presence. And I think this may be your first opportunity to experience this amazing evening in New York, so thank you for being here. And so with that, I would wish you a good program and turn the mic back over to Bob and just let you know, have a great evening, and happy to talk to you more about Bright Focus and any way we can work with each of you to expand the reach of the vision community. Thank you.
Dr. Paul Sieving is going to say a couple words about this award and others. Paul?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to join you tonight, and I'd really like to add a word of congratulations to Garrett for receiving this Helen Keller Award. Helen Keller is a remarkable woman, I think we know that, and her legacy is synonymous with hope and possibilities and perseverance. And in that spirit, I think that Garrett Mellis certainly deserves this award, both for the perseverance that he has shown in designing a whole new way to do corneal grafting, and in the hope and possibility that he has given to many, many, many people who have vision disability, particularly at the cornea. So Garrett, my word of congratulations to you on very clever technique and for helping very many people. Thank you.
Garrett was my fellow on 2 occasions. Back in 1988, I received a phone call from Dr. Leonard Hitchen, sitting right here in the front. I have a young student from the Netherlands who's here driving me crazy, and I can't find anything for him to do. Could you mind taking him into your office and your research lab just to get him out of our house? So I brought him in, and he seemed rather pleasant. He didn't show his real self at that point. And under a moment of weakness, after he asked me, could I work for you, I don't know what was wrong with me, but I said, well, okay, all right, you can come work in the lab. And he started in 1988, and he was very unmerciful to me, so much so he was asking me questions. Every 15 minutes I had to hide in the men's bathroom to get away from him. Years later, I got even with him. I was on his PhD thesis committee, and I got a chance to pick on him a little bit. So during the years that Garrett was with us, two 6-month stints, 88 and 92, he was my most productive fellow during that time, publishing over 8 papers and umpteen abstracts. Starting out his research, and a question I'd asked him, why do the Russians doing radial keratotomy get better results than the Americans who cut the other way? And that became his PhD thesis on wound healing with radial keratotomy. So one day we're doing surgery, and he was observing my transplant surgery, and he leaned over, why are you transplanting the whole cornea when the disease is in the back of the cornea? I said, come on, what kind of a dumb question is that? So I just went on, and then he would be in my office, and he'd say, you have a heck of a lot of astigmatism you're struggling with all the time. If you just operate on the back of the eye, you won't have astigmatism. I didn't pay attention to that either. But anyway, we did publish a lot of papers, and the one I have highlighted in red was one that finally I gave in to him and said, okay, start working on the back of the cornea. Well, one of the roles, I think, and many of you here will agree, of a mentor is to give to your students so that one day they will supersede whatever you accomplished in your life. And I stand here today feeling very proud that Garrett has surpassed me by light years, and the things he's accomplished, I couldn't be more proud as if I was his father. And so, Garrett, on behalf of all of us, we are grateful for your brain, your talent, and wish you continued success. Thank you.
Well, there were a few surprises there, but not too bad. But Jack, what can you add to that? Jack Parker, a young cornea doctor in the making. Will you say a few words?
Dr. Morris, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak here on behalf of Dr. Mellis. It really is an incredible honor and a real gift to me, so I really appreciate it. I mean, you know many of the things that Dr. Mellis is responsible for. You know that he invented DLEC, you know that he invented DSEC and DMEC and hemi-DMEC and quarter DMEC and Bowman layer transplantation. There are lots of other things you probably don't know about. You may not know that the reason we use trypan blue in the eye, for example, is because of Garrett Mellis. He figured out that that was a good thing to do. There are all sorts of things that you never would know that are his innovation because he's such a quiet, humble, sweet, generous guy. It's really been one of the greatest fortunes of my life to be able to go to Rotterdam and spend time with him, and the unbelievable company that he keeps. I mean, you can really tell what kind of guy he is by the people that he surrounds himself with. I mean, Isabel and Lamise and Hanukkah, I mean, they just wonderful, wonderful staff. Silke, I mean, just phenomenal people in Rotterdam. And it's not a coincidence. Really, it's been such a wonderful honor and a pleasure to get to know you. Thank you so much, Garrett. It really is a highlight of my life to have been your student and to be your friend. Thank you so much.
As many of you know, Keller Johnson, Helen Keller's great niece, is usually with us, but she has an illness that she's recovering from right now. And in her absence, we want to show a brief video. How about that? Her legacy gets deeper and deeper the more you work under it. I think Garrett captured it well when he said, "A woman who won an impossible battle against darkness and silence and made her fellow sufferers the beneficiaries of her victory." Come on up. Here's an honorarium, and but the most important thing is what Stacy's going to give you. Become the 2017 Helen Keller Laureate.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Morris. Thank you, the board members of the Helen Keller Foundation, Bright Focus Foundation. Thank you all for being here. And I'm actually not only surprised to be here just for the work that we may have done. Actually, to begin with, I haven't done so much. We have a team in Holland of about 50 women and 5 men, if I'm correct. that basically is doing the work, and the 5 men are just, hanging around a little bit, and the women are working. And it brings me to the first surprise, basically, that why do you choose for an ophthalmologist to stand up here and not for an ENT doctor? Because my main problem in life is that these women never listen. And it would be such a challenge, to do something about it. I mean, the whole world, Actually, when I was preparing, this presentation, I was thinking, what would be now of interest to show you? Because a lot of you are not eye doctors, and I could go in detail about all kinds of technical stuff. But I thought, well, what is a more general thing is what we really learned, so to speak, in the past 10 or 15 years from trying to come up with new surgical techniques and how does it work? And at some point, it's really surprising that you learn something that is completely unexpected. And I would try to explain that to you. So what to do with ideas, if you have an idea. Next, please. The first thing is, and I thought it was kind of nice, if you try to capture Helen Keller in one word, I also spoke with Dr. Morris about it, self-forgetfulness. I'm not sure if it's really a word in English, but is it a word? It's her word. It is actually very relevant to R&D or to science, because the more you're convinced that your own idea is the right idea, if it is the wrong idea, you're going completely in the wrong direction. And that may be happening far more often than you actually think, because we are so programmed and we are so convinced of ourselves. What I would first like to do is to introduce a few people that have been very important. And you already met Dr. Binder, you already saw Dr. Binder. I spent some time in his laboratory in my early 20s. And then you have the impression that your career goes up, you learn a lot, and all kinds of things are coming towards you, and it was a really pleasant time. But I was living with the Hitchens in their home, and you could see the effect it had on my career. I mean, it went down like crazy again. Dr. Hitchen is also sitting here. And then at some point, and that is really thanks to these two people, you start to think of, can we not improve surgical techniques more or less as a hobby? So during my residency, and I still am amazed that it actually happened, but there was a little shed behind my home at the time, and I had a surgical microscope there and was trying to do all kinds of surgical procedures just to practice and to, to move things forward as a hobby. But the woman next door, my neighbor, she thought it was kind of odd that, somebody would go into the shed, stay there for hours, and then come back, and what is happening up there? She didn't trust it, really. So at some point, there were two officers in front, ringing on my front door, and really asking if they could enter the home, and especially have a look in the shed. And there were all these eyes, big eyes, and some human eyes, maybe, sitting on a shelf, and I'm not entirely sure what type of conversation they had with my chairman at the time, but to make a long story short, I could actually do my training, but it was a little bit of a scary moment. And basically, we came to a strategy that you just try to find a way that you're going to listen, and that I mean it really seriously. I was saying an ENT doctor standing here, but the thing is that we do not listen as doctors to nature. We as doctors, we know best. We have the training, and if we see a patient with a certain type of disease, we're going to say, you have that type of disease, I know what to do. And if things don't work out, we call it a complication or a side effect. That's it. Whereas it's actually the other way around. I mean, if you try to design a surgical technique in a way that you work with the body, with nature, the results are probably going to be much and much better, if you understand what I mean. And that's basically the idea behind the NEOs as a whole, to not think, not to do what you actually think is best, and that's again the self-forgetfulness, with Helen Keller, in a scientific background, but to listen to nature, because you're never going to win from nature. That is the first thing that you may keep in mind. Next, please. And so far, it has been a successful strategy. There are tons of people operated with our techniques. And I think we also have been very lucky with the internet just coming up, so that we were able to also tell people about and show what we were doing. And now the interesting thing is, you think if you come up with something new, that everybody is going to say, that is really nice, and we're all going to do it. And that is not going to happen. The opposite is going to happen. People are going to say, we don't want this. There is a resistance, there is an antagonism, so it comes at a price. It started with, my neighbor that actually saw that I was doing something and think that cannot be right. It's the same thing. But if you introduce something new, then it doesn't fit our concept anymore, what we are used to. And people start to feel uncomfortable, which is a natural thing. If you would go to a supermarket and you know where everything is and you can blindly find the stuff you need, if they would change everything around every day, you're going to say, don't do that because, I cannot find the food anymore that I need. So what is the problem? I try to explain it a little bit. I would want to explain it a little bit to a situation that I saw at some point in a city where a dog was sitting on the sidewalk with glasses, dark glasses, as if the dog was blind. And across the street there was a guy sitting drinking beer. And this animal was getting fees or tips like crazy. Everybody was just giving him money. And the guy was drinking his beer. But if this animal would say, I'm actually going to help somebody, I'm actually going to help a blind person to find his way, then the guy across the street would not be happy because, you would take away his business. Is that making sense so far? Yeah? So basically what you have a system error that the whole system that we are part of wants to have the status quo, has an interest in the status quo. You need more or less the antagonism to really improve an innovation or an idea. And the reason probably because at some point we looked at 80 projects that at some point we were doing, and I tried to figure out which are the most successful, which projects are leading to a breakthrough or have the most long-term value. And to my surprise, the ones that were the most difficult from a political point of view were by far the most successful. And probably what you're doing, and it's also making sense, that if you are getting resistance, if people are critical towards you, what you're going to do is think it through if it's worthwhile going on. And it forces you to really focus on the core of what you're doing. I mean, not all kinds of side steps or everything. You just have to focus and you're going to evaluate, is it really worthwhile going on? And your team, if there's a common enemy, is going to say, we're going to prove them wrong. These are all little things by which you basically improve the idea, you improve the innovation. So you actually need the antagonism to make something successful. And it brings you to a next step, what to do with an idea, because that's also a difficult. Sometimes people come up to you and they say, I have this super idea and we have to do this right now. And then you think to yourself, well, I'm not so sure because, did you really think it through? But if you say such a thing, they're not going to like you. So, for example, the guy that wants to photograph a certain animal, it's nice to have the picture, but it may have consequences. Or during a wedding that you think a nice picture and it may just not turn out the way you have planned. So what we basically did is design an evaluation that you score ideas according to hard parameters and soft parameters, and just to let people score themselves some type of idea and see whether or not it is worthwhile pursuing such an idea. And then you make it objectively, instead of that you say something about it yourself. You can actually, in an objective way, find out whether it is not, whether or not it is worthwhile going on with. But it's difficult, because you know, maybe from writing, there are some very famous people said, you have to kill your darlings. The things that you love the most in writing, or maybe with ideas, are maybe, that may at some point look very, very promising to you, may not work. Well, I don't want to go into too much detail, but, and you also, if you do not pursue something, if somebody else runs with it, you have to accept it. That's also, you know, that's part of life. To take it one step further, and again, it surprises me basically to have an eye doctor standing here and not an ENT or somebody who really knows something, because I also with Jack, many times, I'm really serious here, many times we spoke about, if you look at ophthalmology, really, we do not know what we're doing. We do not know the causes of most of the diseases. We do something, we don't know the effect. We don't know the long-term effect. In corneal surgery, all the things that I've learned during my training did not prove to be true. From the endothelium, you know, we may have been doing transplants for 100 years, for a century, whereas the host cells, for those people who are ophthalmologists, if the host cells are involved in making the cornea clear again, why do you need a transplant? If that would really be true. And it's more and more being evident that the host cells are involved. But it's true for glaucoma, it's true for retinal disease, cataract, you know, one of the surgeries that is performed, I think the most performed surgery worldwide with LASIK. We don't know anything, why, what causes it, and we just do some surgery that is, you know, I'm not sure. Is it really necessary? And if this is true for ophthalmology, if this is true for corneal surgery, if this is true for ophthalmology, maybe you can also say, where are we in medicine as a whole? I mean, what are we actually doing? You know, is it really, are we really doing some science, or is it that we're just maybe doing the best we can? But I always have the feeling that as a doctor, maybe you don't know even 1% of what is, and that's already a lot, of what is really going on in the human body. The question now is what you have to do about it. Because on the one hand, you can say, the whole system is wrong and, you know, we have to change everything. But on the other hand, it's a huge opportunity. It's a huge opportunity out there. Because if we are in a system where the system is just teaching us to just do things, and everybody, we write books and everybody is going to do the same thing and expanding on the same concepts over and over again. And if these concepts, and I'm now going back to the first slide with the self-forgetfulness, you know, of Helen Keller, if those ideas are not correct to begin with, we all go in a certain direction. Whereas if we would look in the other direction, there may be a huge opportunity, business, medical, whatever opportunity out there. And that is what I also try to teach our fellows, you know, not to believe everything you learn, Jack, but maybe to look in a different way and see what's out there. And to end my talk, I would very much like to thank the team in Holland and also in the US that has been working and actually has been doing all the work. I mean, I am here and I can, you know, have this beautiful award, but I would really want to acknowledge them. Some are here at this table and at this table. Thank you very, very much for helping out in the past 15 years, and thank you very much for acknowledging it. Thank you very much.